Hello everyone. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Isabel Novo from the University of A Coruña and the chair of the Scientific Committee of EDASS International Conference. I will give a few words to introduce this event, and I will use this PowerPoint presentation that is written in Spanish to allow everyone understanding what I'm saying. So I will speak in English, but the presentation will be in Spain. So I will start telling that it is a truly an honor to speak to you today as the main researcher of the Inseai project for my university of A Coruña, and to give the welcome to all present people here in Rome for the 40th edition of the EDASS International Conference, and also, and first of all, to the Nicole Cusano University for hosting this event and for so generously opening its doors to the presentation of our project. Inseai, which officially started in January 2025 and will run until 2028, emerges at a key moment for understanding the structural changes for our labor markets. The informal economy, although often invisible in statistics, represents a tangible reality in lives of millions of people, both in Europe and Latin America. Understanding and addressing it through a comparative interdisciplinarity and rigorous lens is an urgent. This international academic forum, diverse, inclusive, and engaged with the major contemporary debates, is the best space to give visibility to a project like Inseai 2023. Not only because of the high quality of the research being presented here, but also due to the collaborative spirit that drives it. Disseminating initiatives like this in a conference such EDASS allows us to build networks, share approaches, and mutually enrich our investigations. One of the greatest strengths of the Inseai project is a broad network of participating institutions. This Congress brings together more than 70 universities and research centers. Among them, we can talk about the Universidad Autónoma and the Universidad Complutense of Madrid, the University of La Matanza in Argentina, and also, for example, University of Cartagena in Colombia, University of Patras in Greece, and a lot of them that I will not say the names of all of them. So this rich mosaic of perspectives allows us to address informality from many angles: labor economics, taxation, sustainability, human development, and the impact of digitalization. And that is precisely the spirit we aim to promote: an open, committed, and socially useful science to confront our most pressing challenges. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the institutional and academic support that has made for this presentation, especially to Professor Santos Ruesga, General Coordinator of the Inseai project, who will speak next, and to the colleagues of the organizing committee, Marco Valeri and Jose Picatoste, also member of this project, for their generous dedication in making this session a reality. For us, as the University of A Coruña, this project is also an opportunity to learn, to contribute, and to build stronger ties with the institutions across the globe. We know that projects like Inseai do not only generate knowledge, but also bring about meaningful change. And we are convinced that by approaching it through collaboration, this change will be even more impactful. So, very much for your attention, and above all, thank you for being part of this global research network.
Hello, it is a pleasure to be with you. We will open a debate on some issues related to informality as a socioeconomic phenomenon. First, let me briefly introduce the Inseai 2023 network. A network of researchers and technicians created to communicate and disseminate studies on informality in its many manifestations. We already had a lengthy background accumulated over more than 50 years of studying the phenomenon. There are many areas of study and many others are emerging in the context of informality. And yet, we don't have a single definition of this expression of capitalism in its more diverse forms. And this is what we will address in the second part of this discussion, with the contribution of Agustín Salvia from the University of Buenos Aires, UBA. There is also no unanimity across the different disciplines on how to approach the governance of the informality in its transition to formality. We will debate this topic with Klaus from the GEWAK, Germany. And then we generalize the discussion. Let's get to it. As we know, it is very important to highlight that research in the humanities is increasingly interdependent. That means understanding a phenomenon, an activity, or a relationship thoroughly and good quality requires several perspectives to allow for all possible profiles for its interpretation. Therefore, in compartmentalized science, we need multidisciplinary diagnostics to do research. Teams will take a comprehensive, holistic approach and addresses all aspects of the humanities. The most appropriate way is to turn to multidisciplinary teams that address all problem profiles. A unidirectional understanding of the phenomenon is not necessary. It is needed to advance a holistic, multidisciplinary understanding. To achieve this, working in network of interconnected professionals is essential. The Inseai project aims to create an international network for knowledge and comparative analysis of informality and policies to be implemented for informalization in the UE and Latin America. The interdisciplinary and intersectorial approach involves academic, non-academic, and non-eligible funding entities, most of them in Latin America. In total, in Isai 2023 projects are working 27 entities from difference from 16 different countries. Training activities and debate event will be organized through comments and if a specific tool to detect, prevent, and avoid informality will develop with the network members and people from their environment societal collaboration. We could synthesize that we had no extensive information, analysis, and debate on multiple aids and manifestations of the phenomenon of informality that provide us with knowledge about different topics. One, the heterogeneity of the economic or occupational structure which is articulate in turn with the gender gaps in paid and unpaid work, expresses in the existence of the highly feminized branch or sectors that concentrates on working condition and income, also considering the phenomenon of the young. Another relevant dimension of the analysis refers to regional disparities. The productive and technological concentration typical of the peripheral economic structure has consequences at the territorial level. Furthermore, definition and conceptual development on informality have been evolving and boundaries have been drawn between different characterizations of the phenomenon. On the other hand, quantified informality with different purposes and developing different estimation methodologies. Characteristic of it in different multidisciplinary perspectives from the sociology, anthropology, law, economy, social psychology, etc., is presented in our studies. A diverse account in time, space, and socioeconomic function of the interactivity between the informal and the formal, and its interpretation in the light of different theoretical approaches. That means that theoretical approach a wide range of interpretation about the phenomenon and its socioeconomic determinant, and ultimately about the design of policies implemented to face the phenomenon and the dynamic of sustainable development as a point of the arrival of socioeconomic scientific discourse. In this sense, it is interesting to note that different theoretical ways of approaching to the phenomenon of informality, which we could classify as dualist, structuralist, legalist, voluntarist, or holistic, both in the macro and micro socioeconomic order to which one or several driven empirical approach could be added. So it is necessary to boast knowledge of informality at a widely extended socioeconomic phenomenon, depending its determinant geographic asymmetry, temporal dynamic, and incidence on sustainable development. For this reason, is because Inseai network face at least seven critical challenges currently. One is raising the level of research organization in the region of informal issues, covering the current state of the art, knowledge, and formalization governance lacks. The second is multiplying the effect of research results open the possibility of catching public policy policy interests. And the first is driving to the first is raising the level of research. Is driving the PhD students' attention to the informality as an endemic issue deeply rooted in the globalized, dynamic, changing people life and stratifying world peripheral capitalist position. And the fourth is developing open science, promoting gender equality, and consolidating the network continuity. The fifth issue is concerned to develop training tasks, exchanging knowledge and methodologies, and trying to innovate in analysis and quantification tools with the support of research and dissemination technologies. The sixth is managing external database, and those generates by the network of tools using big data, algorithms, APP, etc. for public use in favor of informality knowledge and estimation and the formalization process. Formalization process governance. And seventh, bringing together research and innovation interests from academic and civil society entities to understand the convergence and divergence in structure and structuring labor market and informality dynamic in region with different degrees of development. In this context, we had considered some objective and output of the project, which are related to several topics. Firstly, we haven't yet agreed on the definition, but we are continuing to develop many of the classes contains concepts, interpretation, methodologies, empirical analysis of very diverse dimension and scope. Second, you give dimension in employment and to a lesser extent in GDP. Informality, so that from a point of view, is becoming to a new normal situation, normal economical and socio-economical situation. Thus, it is necessary to redefine the contemporary capitalism and the contemporary society, in this case, for understand better all the complex situation and in particular the informal activities. The boundary of the informal sector are expanding so that we no longer consider only production for the market, but also the products and the production of the goods and services that we have got in the market, create goods and services for family subsistences. This is not new, but this is more important because it's increasing, returning to the origin, the notion of work and employment, since when providing services for one's own consumption was considered just another job. We are incorporating new contents, for example, the production of the goods and services from the sphere of the domestic economics. For example, caregiving and prostitution. Approach to some phenomena, cross-border trade, a need of new religious networks give us new issues of studies. The frontier economy is a good example for informal economy. And some informal sector organize themselves by creating new dimensions with their own form of formalization, resorting to existing practices that give them greater bargaining power with authority, and allow them to maintain the status quo to some extent. Garbage collector, street vendors, etc. However, the most ignored domestic worker remain. Skill, innovation, and technological change in the informal economy and experience in informality means that in some professions these practices have an entrepreneurial exercise. And informality as a part of international supply chains. This is important because the informality is not a local phenomenon, it's a globalized phenomenon. And finally, authorities are increasingly incorporating actions that bring the boundary between informality and closer together. In line with the ILO's 2015, the International Labour Conference, policy and strategies to address and support transition from informality to formality are increasingly on government agenda. Also, it also transcends the traditional view of public authority who seeks to incorporate the informal into the formal through the regulation. Now they seek, they empower the social actor to involve in an informality, utilizing the knowledge of it, a new scenario for emergence open up. New comings, new paths to emergency are opening up through new forms of involvement and utilizing formulas from the social and the solidarity economy. The social economy is is a new way for transition to the formalization. Well, okay, now we are hearing to Agustín discussing about the conceptualization of the informal economy. Please, Agustín, when you want.
Dear colleagues, the title of my presentation is Informal Economy, Labor Precarity, and Registered Work, Different Concepts and Different Problems. It is an honor to be here today to address a crucial topic for our research in labor economics and labor sociology. I am referring to the polysystemic concept of labor informality, with its multiple theoretical possibilities and limitations, as well as its implication for public policy design. Given that my command of the English language is limited, I kindly ask you to allow me to present this paper through a subtitled video, accompanied by the slide I have prepared. The full version of this presentation, both in English and Spanish, is available and will be sent via Inseai's mail. I apologize in advance for my pronunciation. First of all, it must be recognized that the term informality has been and continues to be used by conceptual and ideological approaches in dispute. Structuralist, Marxist, labor institutionalist, neoclassical and neoliberal perspective, as well as by more recent approaches developed by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ICLARC, and the International Labour Organization, ILO, which with us divide the concept characterize informality as a transversal condition. In this sense, one aspect that is commonly emphasized when addressing the definitional challenges of informality is that the term has different meanings or scopes depending on the theoretical, ideological perspective adopted. In any case, the term informality is a tool, one among many in a toolbox, at the service of different analytical approach and policies agendas. However, that is not the main issue. The core problem is the use of the term informality within the field of labor-related social science lies in its lack of conceptual precision. This is evident even within the same theoretical or ideological orientation. Talking about the informal economy, productive unities operating outside the legal framework is not the same as referring to informal employment labor relation without protection or recognized rights, nor to the underground informal economy understood as economic activities that evade taxation. In this presentation, I aim to highlight how different perspectives shape our understanding of the phenomenon and what implication this was for public policy design. To do so, I draw on contribution from ICLAC, the ILO, and others close to Inseai, such as Fernando Cortés, Julio Nefa, Santos Ruesga, and Roberto Delano. I do not intend to offer an exhaustive review. My objective will be fulfilled if I can help convey the idea that the concept of informality is neither univocal nor universal, and that its use requires an explicit conceptual framework and reference to its empirical manifestation. According to Cortés, drawing on Mario Bunge, a single term may refer to different problems and processes. To study informality is to enter a conceptual and ideological debate over how to interpret key dynamics in labor relations. Thesis I propose is that informality does not have a single defined meaning. It is used to describe distinct phenomena, whose meanings are related but not equivalent. It is now widely acknowledged that informality persists, expands, and diversifies, driven by digitalization, productive specialization, and transformation in welfare regimes. But what kind of informality are we talking about? Economic sectors, tax-evading firms, and unregistered workers, labor relations without protection, and to what extent does a type of economy, developed, transitional, or emerging, impose specific factors on the definition of the phenomenon, even when using the same concept. In my view, this leads to significant differences. To clarify this landscape, it is necessary to address some epistemological questions. First, the units of analysis. As mentioned earlier, the term informality applies to very different phenomena: economic sectors, productive units, workers, and labor relation. Second, the theoretical frameworks. Structuralist approaches link informality to product inequality and labor market segmentation. Institutionalist perspective associate it with weak state regulatory capacity. A neoliberal interpretation framed it as the result of over-regulation and rational evasion by economic agents. Third, the ethical political implication. Is informality a dysfunction to be eradicated? Is it a structural feature to be transformed, or a functional component to the system? If understood as a structural failure of capitalism, the response would be to transform the productive relation that sustain it. If conceived as an adjustment mechanism for the system to function, then perhaps no intervention is justified. This dimension will guide the rest of our discussion. In labor studies, the term informality is often used to describe diverse characteristics of economics and social functioning. The issue is that its meaning shifts depending on the subject to which it is applied. Informal or underground economy activities operating outside fiscal control and state regulation, from small workshops to digital platforms, in behavior depending on the economic cycle and type of economy. In developing countries, it can represent a significant portion of value added and reflect limited access to credit and markets. Informal sector, low productivity production units with scarce capital and weak capacity for accumulation, rooted in England's structuralist perspective. This includes subsistence activities, underdeveloped economics, informal employment, wage-based labor relations that operate outside the labor legislation, and social security systems present in both formal and informal units. Labor precarity or informal, job instability, low wages, temporary contracts, part-time work, even within formally registered employment. In the end, one polysemic concept. Due to time constraints, I will not go into detail about the various conceptualist approaches that have shaped this debate throughout contemporary history. However, these perspectives are fully developed in the writing version of the conference. In this regard, we can highlight Arthur Lewis' dualist theory, the structuralist critique developed by Eklund, the contribution of the ILO's Kenya report, which introduced the notion of an informal sector with low productivity and subsistence. Marxist authors such as Portes and Castell argued that informality could serve capital through subcontracting informal workers. Also, with different perspectives, these contributions from the structuralist thought of Latin American. The neoliberal critics of these views, led by Hernando de Soto, we must also mention the more recent notion of the shadow economy introduced by Goodman and Flake. In parallel, the institutionalist response emerged, emphasizing the crisis of the welfare state and the weakening of its labor institutions. Guy Standing calls the new class arising from these chains the precariat, characterized by insecurity and the absence of labor rights. The synthesis of these debates came at the ILO and ECLAC when it replaced the term informal sector by informal economy and introduced the concept of informal employment. Thus conceptually limited, this shift captured the cross-cutting nature of informality affecting both production units and labor relations. Public policy design in response to informality is currently based on three major conceptual frameworks, each offering distinct definitions, diagnosis, and intervention strategies. These frameworks not only provide divergent understanding of the phenomenon, but also reflect particular political and ideological orientation. The legally institutionalist approach, supported by the ILO and related agencies, emphasizes weak state regulation and unstable labor institutions. It promotes improved social protection, increasing labor inspections, and expanding access to decent work. Reducing informality requires progressive formalization, universal coverage, and targets programs for excluded groups such as women, young migration, and rural workers. The neoliberal approach views informality as a rational response to an unfriendly institutional environment marked by excessive regulation, bureaucratic obstacles, and high formalization costs. Within this perspective, workers and production units choose informality as an adaptive efficiency strategy. Policies focus on simplifying formalization through tax reforms, digital platforms, and flexible contracts. In this most recent formulation, this school of thought promotes formalization through simplification via special tax regimes, digital registration platforms, and flexible labor arrangements that tolerate certain levels of protection deficits. Naturalist approach informed by Eklat and neo-Marxist thought sees informality as rooted in the structural imbalances of peripheral capitalism. It argues that policy should go beyond formalization efforts and promote a deep transformation of the productive structure. This includes industrial diversification, technological upgrading, better infrastructure, and linking informal units to higher productivity sectors to close system gaps. In recent years, the ILO and ECLAC have worked to integrate the different perspectives under discussion. This is done through a multidimensional framework of standards and recommendations that aim to be integrated, although they do not resolve key epistemological tensions. Informality is considered a cross-cutting condition that varies by sector, territory, and type of employment. This approach requires a specific response that combines progressive formulation, productivity, growth, and stronger institutions. Addressing job insecurity, even informal jobs, require contractual stability, decent wages, adequate conditions, and collective negotiation. This analysis demonstrates that the debate on informality transcends methodological discussions and lies at the core of the broader political ideological discussions, one concerning societal models, the role of the state, and the validity of labor rights in contemporary capitalism. Informality is not a neutral or an innocent term. It reflects theoretical choice, political interest, and most crucially, shapes how we diagnose and address labor market exclusions. Moreover, it is a polysemic concept. Its use in academic and policy circles demands transparency. We must insist on clear definitions, delineate its scope, and explicitly state the ethical political motivation guide its application. This debate remains open, as I noted earlier, far from claiming to exhaust the discussion. I hope this exploration has helped illuminate the complex epistemological, conceptual, and political foundation of the term informality. If I have succeeded in this, I will consider my objective fulfilled. Thank you very much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I am Klaus from GEWAK, a Society of Economy, Work and Culture related to the Goethe University in Frankfurt, Germany. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to make some remarks on the dialogue of governance of informality. I would like to start with external target audiences. I'm referring to the communication and dissemination plan developed by the working group of the same name in the Inseai 2023 project. This plan lists important internal target audiences that our project should address. They are strategically relevant actors, public policymakers, business leaders and employers' organizations, trade unions, NGOs, and networks. The knowledge generated in our project is aimed at these players. These actors have a certain interest. It is additional knowledge that expands their ability to act. At the same time, they constitute actor constellations in the different states and societies of Europe and Latin America. Latin America. We can classify them and can use a model of different waves of development. This is a development of formalization which guarantees freedom. This model was developed by the social philosopher Jürgen Habermas. He distinguishes between different types of state: the bourgeois state, the constitutional state, the constitutional democratic state, and the social and democratic state. This is about much more than the sequence of state types from a historical perspective. The classification is also suitable for describing the present. To quote William Faulkner, "The past is never dead, it's not even past." If we modify this model, we arrive at a contrast. No, it's not a contrast. It is an opposition between democracy and dictatorship, or to be precise, three types of democracy: a stable, a young, and insecure democracy. Young democracies are, for example, the Eastern European state since the end of the 1970s. Insecure democracies are states with suboptimal democratic institutions. Moreover, each type of democracy has different constellations of actors. We look at actors that are particularly dedicated to informality and informal work, such as socialist parties, trade unions, NGOs, and democratic networks. Inside these societies, they take on different roles. They can be illegal, they can be legal, they can be legitimate, or even recognized. Each role requires special and specific expertise. I'm coming to my second point: values and criteria. I would like to make 3 comments on generating additional knowledge. Firstly, as a basis, there is a great wealth and knowledge and perspective available in our project. We can address specific national and regional circumstances. This is why the dialogue and exchange of perspectives between our colleagues in Latin America, Eastern and Western Europe on conflict cultures is so important. Secondly, there are common values. Values like sustainable development, labor rights, and non-discrimination. They create perspectives of interpretation and justification for actions towards formality. Values are therefore the basis for accessing the interface between informality and formality, but also for problem solving and important compromises. Of course, values can also have a mobilizing effect. They can make a significant contribution to people voicing criticism and protest or organizing demonstrations and strikes. The Me Too movement is just one example of this. However, values can also be linked to criteria or political spheres of activity. I will only mention labor market and migration policy, digitalization, and public goods. In other words, it is about realizing values. The objective in this case is not protest, but the creation of expertise and well-founded, consistent discourse. As authorities of informality and the transition to formality, the actors can represent their rights and interests vis-à-vis the state and the companies. The aim is to be recognized as a competent and powerful actor. My third comment concerns a method how values can be given validity. We have developed and worked with a model of values, criteria, indicators, and observables, VCIO. This quadruple is an operative chain or the derivative context, or it describes the essence from the abstract to the concrete, to use a Hegel term. Whoever can define the transition to formality so precisely can find recognition in the long term. I've started to apply the VCIO concept to the value of sustainable development. A first attempt can be found in the appendix. 3, an open access concept of informality. I will try to characterize this concept of informality in a little more detail, but of course not so complex as Agustín already did. It should have a heuristic value to address complex economic activity. Informal work is indeed a complex matter. It deals with transaction between economic agents in the absence of contracts or supporting regulation. And it's about economic agents who use social institutions and norms to perform the transaction. We should also pay attention to the aspects of imposed and chosen informality. Do informal workers structure their transactions solely out of economic necessity? They may also have other motives, for example, if impotent institutions in weak democracies pose little risk on detection. Why bother participating? In this case, the observables would take the form of experience reports. A VCIO concept on informality should pay attention to the interface, as I already mentioned, between informal and formal sectors and social movements. And it should contain an open model of transaction with testable hypotheses. This allows us to deal adequately with our multi-perspective wealth in the project. How should we discuss studies of on informality? The ILO recommendation 204 gives us important clues. We could also gain new insights from the ILO indicators. 4. Knowledge for action. How can action-based knowledge be generated? First, he describes the status quo and the genesis of problems. We are in the good position of having reliable ILO data on the extent of informal economy in many countries. But how to interpret these data from the point of view of the values mentioned? I would like to describe 2 case studies as suggestions. I'm currently working on a book about actor constellations in Spain and Germany that form in environmental conflicts. It is intended to provide information on the role that the use of additional knowledge can play in resolving conflicts in the event of excessive water consumption, in Andalusia, for example, and interference in the landscape for lithium extraction in Extremadura. I'm convinced that this will provide insights that strategically relevant actors can also use in other societies. For example, for millions of killed children in Brazil, which are unable to go to school due to the climate change and the falling masses of rain. The second case study from 2024 deals with practical digitalization experience in a multinational company in the pharmaceutical sector. It shows the way in which European works councils can systematically generate additional knowledge in order to exert influence on the management for good digital work. There, 2 colleagues and I developed a digitalization checklist with work councils, the structure of which is in turn based on the VCI quadruple. It enables the works councils at the various locations or sites in Western Europe to transform their experience into practical digitalization knowledge. My hope is that a checklist of a similar kind can also be used for governance of informality. It is interesting to note that informality is a structural problem for all society and across all sectors. In Germany, these problems can be seen in the construction sector and with poverty. Tafel Deutschland, for example, provides thousands of people with free food. Or in Greater Buenos Aires, the problems of cartoneros. A list of problem cases, of course, would fill books. And now to the strategies. I would like to come back to the development of freedom guaranteeing unification that I mentioned in the beginning. It shows that bureaucracy is a prerequisite for a free life for large parts of the population. The administrative system and their bureaucracy can also tame the economic system and limit the constant risk of colonization of the Lebenswelt, or the translation would be life world. However, the development also shows that too much bureaucracy is too much, or to say, is counterproductive. The promise of more freedom for the population is being turned into its opposite. There are various strategies against too much bureaucracy. I want to put them into the form of binary terms. The neoliberal project. My assessment is that it restricts citizens' freedoms and reverses to quality standards that have been achieved, for example, for agricultural projects. But where does this project get its appeal for voters from? Interesting question. The alternative to this is the development of a new quality of democratization. I would like to pose an operational question right away. How can additional knowledge for strategically relevant actors be generated? Let me cite a few experiences from Germany that raise the following questions. How effective is the use of the law? What enforcement deficits are there? Take an example from Latin America, from Amazonia. It is interesting that Senator Cecilia Requena has similar experiences when she fights to stop widespread forest fires and illicit gold mining. And the third question is, do comprehensive regulations cause passivity among citizens? A checklist for evaluating formality and informality could contribute to tackling these weaknesses in formalization. Let me come to concluding remarks. For Germany, Matthias Schulze-Böing, who is joining our conference as well, and I have presented a proposal for a new democratization approach to the governance of formality and informalization in labor markets and immigration policy. We propose overcoming the problems of formalization through controlled informalization. Accordingly, the aforementioned problems such as enforcement deficits could be loosened up to a certain extent by an informalizing deviation from formality. It's about control losses of control of the administrations and more self-organizations of their clients. This could initiate important experiences and learning processes in order to ultimately arrive at a more intelligent formality. Put it into a chain of action. Formality, the status quo, deviation from formality, controlled informality, new formality at the end. Matthias and I recognize that our proposal could probably only be suitable for prosperous democratic societies. For other societies, the range of solutions will have to be broadened. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Matthias.
No, Klaus.
Oh, sorry. You are very, very close in the picture. Okay, you lead the discussion, Isabel. Isabel?
I am here.
We have 20 minutes, more or less.
Please close the micro. Just, we are at the same room, several people here in Salerno. That's why we have problems with the sound. I only would like to thank to all of you, particularly to those that have been listening us, because we used to spend more time that we want sometimes when we start to speak. And I would like to thank everyone and to explain the reason, even Santos told already of this meeting, because we have had a presential session in Rome with the people that was there, but we have technical problems with the internet connection, and that is the reason that we have this session now. And just let you know that this is a pleasure that we can meet all together. But I would like to share you some photos with the event in Rome, so you could see how was the interest that this project gave to the people that was there. They were not involved in the project. They were researchers of other issues, and we feel very happy knowing that they were very interested in this project. So these are my only words, and I would like to hear the people that is connected and in that was so patient to hear of all of us their comments about the presentations. Thank you so much.
Okay, somebody?
Diana, you were in Rome.
Anybody?
I am in the class.
We can help you.
So congratulations, Isabel, for the organization.
It is not
of
working,
EDASS.
your sound. It is not
What?
working. You heard? Yeah. Okay.
Now?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's my problem.
Okay, congratulations to you and to Santos for organizing this conference, international conference in Rome. It was amazing. We participated there in plenary session and parallel session also. And it was an opportunity to cooperate with our colleagues and from the University Nicolo Cusano. I congratulate also Professor Marco Valeri, who was
Host.
I don't know, host the conference, and we meet colleagues from the Inseai also, and Professor Santos and other colleagues, Eva and Asun. We meet and we talk about Inseai, and we plan to do some works together. So congratulations again, and we hope to meet again soon.
I would like to hear Eva, because Eva, I think, is the only one that is in this meeting that is not a member of the project, but she was in the conference in Rome. Eva, what did you think about this project, and how was the people feeling about it in Rome?
We can solve the problem. We can incorporate to Eva to the network. No problem.
Yeah. But I think that as all of us are in the project, we are very happy, and all of us are telling that it is very good. So, Eva, you are in Madrid. We are far. You can tell what you want, and you are not a member of the project. So I think it is a good idea to hear your opinion. Switch the micro, please.
Sorry, I was muted. the handicap is that I am a lawyer, not an economist. So I am not a specialist in the social order. The social order is the laboral order. The job is about job and companies, but I am close to you. I am an intern, a becaria, So I'm just trying to learn from all of you, and well, for me it was very interesting to be in the room with Santos Ruesga in Rome, because they were talking about these themes, and so, well, I had a bit or a big opportunity to learn something, but I am very limited in this area. I am just trying to learn of you, but thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with me and also with all of us. I think it's very interesting.
Come in.
Sorry, don't forget that we have lawyers in our team, as Asun, for example. So you were welcome from your expertise, and we are sure that you can also contribute with your research and your opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any question? No more? Everything is clear? No problem. Okay. Well, then we say to you, we want to say to you thank you to everybody for participating in this meeting. And we wait that is possible in the next 20 days. We will have another meeting by the internet, by the network. Is a meeting with some colleagues, Argentinian colleagues, which is in the Autonomous University. As you are interested in methodologic problems of survey activities, survey employment, survey employment. We talk some of us about that. Another question. If you are interested, we will discuss another topic related to informality, of course. Propose it, and we can do it. Maybe in advance, we have more proposal in the next month, and I inform you about this proposal. Any comment? Any question? Okay, Ben, thank you very much for sharing this one, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Este es el valor de la licencia.
I am going to send the papers to everybody. We will go